So the main thing that we'll be discussing is really how to become familiar with the mind. And sometimes our mind isn't in a place that we're particularly comfortable with. You know, we discover thoughts in our mind that we're not too happy with, you know, or just sort of shocking because we can't believe we can think that way. So it's not always comfortable, but it's interesting. It's always kind of interesting. So, but it's really just keeping an open mind. Please, you know, let me know when you have questions. And I encourage those of you who will be receiving the readings and things, you know, via email, to write your question. Oh, I think that's on the next slide. Let's just go down the list. So it can be helpful through these courses to, you know, try to meditate every day. And so that might be new to you. And so, you know, initially you start with very basic meditation, which is really just about showing up, you know, showing up, sitting down, being quiet for 5 minutes, and we'll learn how to follow the breath. In class, because we've got lots of jargon, you know, and ideas from a different perspective, you might want to take notes. And then I encourage you to read and think about the materials. I know most people don't. I know it's a matter of time, but you might find it helpful. And if you write down your questions, then you can bring them to me, and then we can try to sort them out. And also, you'll have my email. Once I email you the materials, you'll have my email, and you can always email me. Doesn't mean I'll always email you back. I try really hard, but sometimes I get lots of emails, and I lose them. You know, it's like, oh, there were 50 more after you emailed, and I never get back to it, and I apologize for that. But I'm fairly accessible. Everybody knows where the bathrooms are. They're right in this hallway. You know, I go out the front door to the left. It takes a key to get in, but please leave the key in the door because it takes a key to get in. So there's more than one toilet in each of the bathrooms. So, where's Nicole? Where's my brain? So, okay. All right. Anything else? Oh, check your cell phones and have them on silent. And that's all I know. Okay. So Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe was the founder of the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Teachings, the FPMT, which is our parent organization. They have about 160 centers around the world. Lama Yeshe's picture is on to your left of the Buddha statue. He died in 1984. I did not have the merit to meet him, but I rely on his words often. So Lama Yeshe says, I hope that you understand what the word spiritual really means. It means to search for, to investigate the true nature of the mind. There's nothing spiritual outside. My rosary isn't spiritual. My robes aren't spiritual. Spiritual means the mind. And spiritual people are those who seek its nature. So that sort of sums up what Buddhism's all about, is our mind. Now, the word mind and heart are the same in Asian languages. So we sometimes kind of separate those two things, you know, like this is our reasoning and this is our emotion. In Buddhism, they're all states of mind. There's no distinction like that. So, you know, when the Tibetans talk about their mind, they point to their heart. You know, we have the habit of pointing to our heads, but they point to their heart. But it's just all the same. So whether it's love, compassion, or wisdom, they're all states of mind. And the word mind or heart is used to indicate that capacity of a person. So what is mind? So in Buddhism, the mind is not physical. It's not the brain. So the brain is the physical support for the mind. The mind is dependent on the brain, but it is not the brain. It's, the mind is non-physical. Its function is to perceive, to be aware. Its definition is clear and knowing. It's our capacity for subjective experience. It's our capacity to know. According to the Buddha, there's no beginning and no end to the mind. Any questions so far? It's really important to understand this perspective that Buddhism does not consider the mind physical. So we, with all the new technology now, that we can now see what happens when we're thinking about compassion, what part of the brain activates. Buddhism would say it's not the brain causing the thought of compassion, it's the thought of compassion that activates the brain. So they're very interdependent and are connected, but they're not the same thing. And if you tried to point to the mind, you'd never be able to do it. You could point to the physical supports for the mind, but actual awareness or thoughts, you wouldn't be able to point to. So the mind is momentary. So each moment of mind has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It arises, it abides for a split second, and disappears. It's taught that there are 65 moments of mind in a finger snap. So until you meditate, you might not realize just how fast your mind is and how many thoughts we can cram into a minute. But it's even more than that, because we're not aware of most of our thoughts. Our awareness, our ability to focus on what's going on in our mind is generally pretty poor, but we can cultivate it so that we can become much more able to keep up with the river of thoughts that's going through our mind. So even though the mind has no beginning and no end, it's still momentary. So our mind, your mind, my mind, everybody in this room's mind is a continuum of moments of mind. So it's not like something that's, actually nothing exists this way, but like when we turn on a light, it's on, right? Our mind, even though there's no beginning and no end, it's not like it doesn't have a pause between moments of mind. It's really a series of moments. So your mind is a continuum of mind that has no beginning, no end. It's always existed. My mind is a continuum of mind. It's always existed. There's no beginning, no end. But it's not this continuous, it's momentary. They're moments. Is that making sense? This is very hard to describe. Like sometimes you hear it described as like if you have a bunch of tea lights, candles, and you take one lit candle and light the next one and then light the next one and light. You would say that they all have a continuum of that flame that started it, but each flame is separate. And that's what our mind is like. And every moment of mind that we have, those 65 in a finger snap, so it's something like 12,000 a minute or something, or an hour. I mean, it's just some outrageous number. I can't do the math. leaves an impression on this mental continuum, and this is a tendency. And so every impression is either the beginning of a very new habit, tendency, or an extension of one we've already started. For the most part in our life, we are continuing on with our habits of mind. And every moment of mind makes these impressions stronger. So if you practice a lot of anger, it's really easy for anger to arise. You have a habit of anger. If you have a habit of generosity, it's very easy for the mind of generosity to arise because you've practiced it a lot. These tendencies become the sort of the grab basket we can draw from in every moment of how we respond to what's external to us. And so our habits of mind are very important to how we respond to our lives. Our mind is sort of a holder of our potential. Because of this, these imprints that we place on the mind, these habits. So this is going to, so this also leads to the subject of karma. Karma is the Buddhist word for the law of cause and effect. So in the physical world, what does cause and effect look like?
Well, you bump into a car and it smashes it. There's a cause.
That's an energetic example, yes.
So it's more instant. It's more instant. Like if you do something and if you see the effect right away.
Maybe. How about if you plant a seed?
Well, that's the cause for an effect. Yeah.
It's a cause for effect.
Everything has a consequence.
And everything has what? So you plant a seed. Can anything come from that seed?
Specific.
No, a tree or whatever you planted.
It has to be related to the seed, right? So if you plant a mango seed, what are you going to get?
Mango.
A mango tree. Fingers crossed. Okay. So, and you don't just want the mango tree, right? You want the mangoes. So, but it's not just the seed, is it? What else do you need?
Water.
Soil. Sunlight.
Nutrients.
So lots of conditions. So you have the substantial cause, which is the seed. You need a mango seed. Or maybe a mango graft. I don't know. Whatever. I'm not a gardener. So, but then, in addition to that substantial cause, you need conditions. And all of that has to come together in order to get the mango tree. If some of the conditions aren't there, you might have the seed, but it turns out that all you have is flooding, and so you never have any sun, and so the mango tree, in fact, the mango seed, goes down the river and goodbye. And so it never grows into a tree. The mind is also like this. So you have, if you have a tendency towards anger, that is the substantial cause of anger. But you need conditions for it to arise. So you're not just angry all the time, are you? No, something happens. And if you are accustomed to having anger arise with those conditions, then when those come together, ta-da, anger arises. Now, does this mean we can't do anything about it? No. This is the good news. The mind is not fixed. It's not inherently one way or another. Your mind is not inherently different than my mind. All of our minds have the same capacity. What's different is how we train them. So the training matters. What we've been practicing matters. And if we change what we practice, we can change how we think. Is that easy to do?
No.
So the good news, bad news. So the good news is we can change it. We can change our mental habits just like we can change our physical habits, you know. We can decide, okay, I'm going to quit driving this way to work every day. I'm going to drive a different route to work every day. This is the way I usually respond to red lights, is to get annoyed, but I can change that. So the mind and actions of the body aren't so different in terms of the fact that they're flexible. It just takes effort. And it takes knowing what's going on. We have to get really familiar with our mind to understand what our habits of mind are. And then we have to get really familiar with our habits and see if we think they really are working out well for us. Like, some of our habits might be. Maybe you have a really natural, where it's really natural for you for compassion to arise when you see someone suffering, And that's one of the ways in which we take care of each other. So that might be something we want to keep doing. Then again, we might also have practiced impatience, which might kind of get in our way of happiness. Where anything that's not going according to my set schedule of time might be a condition for me to get frustrated. How does that feel? How skillful is impatience? If you want to suffer, be impatient. It's a suffering mind. So we have to observe this about ourselves, see what's going on in our mind, and then decide, is this working for me or not? Is it possible to change it or not? And so we have to investigate these things. Really start paying attention to what's going on in our mind. So when we're studying mind in our text and things, it divides the mind into two main things according to the function. So we talk in terms of a primary mind, which perceives just the mere entity of an object, and then mental factors or states of mind, which perceive the characteristics of an object. They're all mind. It's not really like these are separate things, but it's just for the convenience of communication. So I always look at it like, if the mind is the hand, the fingers are the states of mind.
Wait, sorry.
If the mind is the hand, the fingers represent the states of mind, or mental factors. They're all mind, they all accompany the mind. They're not separate from the mind. They arise at the same time as the mind. They abide, and then they cease at the same time as that moment of mind. And the states of mind are what directs our mind on what we are focused on. So if we have a habit of dissatisfaction with things, then our states of mind might zero in on what's wrong with the picture, because we have a habit of that. If we have a habit of wanting to be of help, then our states of mind might zero in on how we might be able to help in a situation. And of course, we have all these skills. We have all these states of mind. It's just some we practice more than others. So mind, this is jargon, mind, knower, awareness, consciousness are all synonyms in Buddhism. So they're kind of used interchangeably. Mental factors and states of mind are also synonyms. I tend to use states of mind. But the text, like all my textbooks, said mental factors. So who knows what's coming out of my mouth. Mind is our capacity for subjective experience. It's our capacity to know. Main minds merely reflect their objects. Mental factors are the states of mind that define those objects. And I always try to come up with an example of what it means by this mere entity of an object. What is a main mind? And it's kind of hard because we always have mental factors. So I think it's sort of like, and it's hard not to use visual description, sort of like the main mind kind of sees the object, say if it was visual. The mental factors give it color, shape, labels, whether we think it's pleasant or unpleasant, attractive or unattractive, you know, all of this kind of thing. Okay, so we were talking about cause and effect. So there's a substantial cause for a mango tree is a mango seed that was planted. The substantial cause of mind are previous moments of mind. So each moment of our mind is the producer of the next moment of mind. Okay? My moments of mind cannot produce your moments of mind. So they only produce a moment in that continuum. We all each have a continuum of mind. Mine is defined as mere clarity and awareness. Let's see. We're going to go, I'll come back to the definition. There are also levels of mind. So we've talked about the continuum of mind, you know, the moments, but there are also different levels of mind. There's a gross mind that we're all familiar with. It's our everyday mind, you know, that all our thoughts that we have all day long, all, you know, all the thoughts, the senses that we have. So according, these are our experience of everything is sort of our gross mind. Then the subtle mind is the mind that only arises, like, you know, like when you sleep, that's a subtler level of mind. When you faint, it's a subtle level of mind. When you sneeze. So, and then you have the most subtle mind, which is only manifest for an ordinary being at the moment of death. And this is the mind that goes from life to life. This is the level of mind. So at the moment of death, our gross minds, all the, you know, have ceased. What they've been, you know, what's operating then are subtle minds. And it gets more and more subtle till that moment, the last moment. And then that moment, just where the most subtle mind arises, or manifest, produces the next moment of mind in the next life. Making sense? Sort of, more or less?
I've never heard that it's at the moment of sneeze.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed you can't, like, stop a sneeze? I mean, you know, like, once it's there, it's, you know, it's an automatic reflex. So that blank mind that you experience at the time of a sneeze is an example of a subtle mind. It's sort of that, you know, just blank mind. These are, of course, just similar to, they're not exactly the same as like the most subtle mind. But this is just to get you an idea that, of course, because we talk about in psychology that we have subconsciousness, all of these things. So we have, you know, we have different degrees of the strength of our mind. And this is all happening incredibly fast and constantly. Oops, this is a repeat.
So would you say a subtle mind is an aha moment?
It can be if we notice it. Because if the Buddhist teachings are correct, we've died countless times since beginning this time, and for the most part, no, we don't notice it. One of the reasons that meditation becomes a skill that we want to develop is because by developing your concentration stabilizing that, you can actually recognize, or even in certain types of meditation, cause the subtle mind to manifest. This is part of how you can become enlightened, is having this kind of control over your mind. So for the most part, no, we don't notice our subtle states of mind at all. But it's
But a dream, you wake up, you remember your dream. Is
Mhm.
that a subtle state of mind?
not when you're awake. But your mind during sleep is operating on a more subtle level than your
Awake.
awake consciousness. The right adjectives. Make sense? Okay. It's not like all our sense consciousnesses are not functioning at all in our sleep, because we hear our alarm clock sometimes and that kind of thing. But it's definitely at a more reduced level, unless you practice. I'm sure parents with new children and baby children, otherwise known as babies,
Just baby.
just babies. They have a heightened ability to listen, to hear their child always, no matter where they are, whether they're asleep or if they're in a mall. They're very attuned to the sound of their baby's cries. This is a skill we have. So those things don't, and this is intentional. I don't mean just the body is intentionally like that, but we also, without thinking, want to be able to hear it. So it's part of why we can hear it, is that we have told our mind to be directed towards it, without it being a specific, conscious instruction. Yeah.
What about this, the phase between being awake and falling asleep, like that?
You're kind of shifting. So if you remember from Death and Rebirth, the dissolutions, as you fall asleep, are similar to the dissolutions of the time of death, because your awareness is sinking to a less conscious. This is the trouble with jargon. It's to a non-waking consciousness.
So that's subtle when it's a non-waking when you're
Yeah,
in that.
when you are asleep.
You are asleep.
So every moment of mind, you could say, has a main mind and its mental factors. That's just for the purpose of study. And there are 6, a single entity. Okay, so the mind, yes.
So when the person is meditating, in what state of mind the person is?
It's generally still just your waking consciousness, unless you are a very practiced yogi, and you may have entered a more subtle state. So the mind and mental factors are a single entity. So it's not like you have a mind and mental factors out here. It's all one moment of mind. There's 6 main minds, one for each of the physical senses and the mental main mind. So this is different from the way we speak of it in general. So according to Buddhism, our ability to be aware of visual objects, objects of smell, objects of touch, objects of taste, objects of sound, are awarenesses. So we have an eye awareness, ear awareness, nose awareness, body awareness, taste, tongue awareness, as well as a mental awareness. Now these awarenesses are dependent, our sense awarenesses are dependent on our sense organs. So if you have functional, ear organs, eyeballs, all of those things, that's what allows you, that's the support that allows you to see objects or hear sounds. But if there's something wrong with your brain in terms of being able to transmit from that organ to the brain, you may have nothing wrong with your eyes and still not be able to see, because the pathways aren't connected. But if they're all working, then eye awareness is able to be aware of form. Is that making sense? These cease at the time of death. These sense, right? Because they are completely dependent on the physical sense organs. Okay? They just reemerge with the next body and the sense organs that accompany that body. The mental awareness is dependent on a mental sense factor that is also non-physical. So we're not talking brain here. Clearly, we also are dependent on the brain. So far, so okay? So there are many mental factors, but in general, they talk in terms of 51. Don't ask me why, but they're only really concerned, when you start looking at text, they're really only concerned with the mental factors that either keep you stuck in cyclic existence or propel you into more suffering, or those that can help you get out of suffering. So that's the focus. But we all know that we have just countless levels. My impatience has so many different levels to it. You know. I mean, I'm glad there's not a name for each type. With every moment of mind, there are 5 mental factors. This is why the hand is so convenient as an illustration, that are always present. This is, contact means that sense power, whether it's a ear or mental sense power, has come in contact with an object. Okay? Recognition, that's our state of mind that distinguishes or discerns one object from another. Feeling is the experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that moment of mind experiences. Intention is a state of the mind that turns your mind towards an object. It's sort of that urge to look. Oh, it's what, and we develop habits that, you know, that, oh, I really like the color red, so I always notice it, you know, whatever. So that's what turns the mind. But attention is a state of mind that zeroes in on a particular aspect of the object. I mean, it could be like all the colors, you know, but it's what picks out something about the object. But if you're not very attentive, you won't really remember the object. So these, you know, they're always present, but the degree of how much they're present determines whether we can remember them, whether we, you know, and how attentive we are usually is determined by our interest level as well, and other conditions, like fatigue. So contact is just the mental factor that arises when the mind meets its object. Recognition, sometimes it's translated as discrimination or discernment. It's what distinguishes one object from another by knowing the characteristics, and eventually, of course, a label. You know, babies might not have the name for something, but they do distinguish objects. If it's weak, we won't remember having seen the object even. This is like when you're reading a really good book and the phone rings, you know, and so you might not really pick up on the fact that the phone is ringing because you're so attuned to what you're seeing by reading the book. Feeling is simply the experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is jargon. So the way we use the word feeling is not what they mean by feeling in this context as one of the mental factors that's always there. Whether something is pleasant or unpleasant or neutral is a big player in how we respond to objects. Feelings are conditioned and also conditioning. And we'll go into that. So it is conditioned from our habits since beginningless time. You know, so we can develop preferences, right? It is conditioning because it sets up the same response in the future, strengthening the object. So, the habit. So like if you like sweets, and every time you eat a sweet, you think it's pleasant, you make this connection between sweets and pleasant. And then your mind is drawn towards sweet objects. You desire them, you have craving for them. And every time you give in to that, you strengthen that connection. I don't know if I want to go there. Intention, it's what turns the mind towards the object. It's sometimes called volition, sometimes called karma, which isn't a great use of it. But it's sort of like why we choose to turn our mind towards an object, which is somewhat, it's due to our habit, but it's definitely what turns our mind towards an object. So like say you're really a musical person, so if you walk into a room and there's music playing, your mind just naturally, your ear awareness naturally is drawn to the music. If you're not musical at all, that may not happen. It directs the mind according to feeling. If you don't like what you're hearing, you may do this, turn away from it, or ask someone to shut up. One of those things. New karma is created in every moment of mind because intention is present. So what this is getting at is in every moment of mind, we place an imprint. We also place what's called, which is what gives rise to a habit. We also place what's called a seed on our mental continuum that ripens in the future as an experience of something pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. According to Buddhism, all of our actions of body, speech, and mind, so that means it includes mental actions of thought, have consequences. So if they're mental, that's a cause, and its effect is an experience of pleasant, neutral, or unpleasant. So everything that we experience according to Buddhism is the ripening of a past action of body, speech, or mind. This is a huge topic. And it comes up in every course. So as we go through them, you get more and more of a sense of what this means. But it's basically emphasizing that the way we think matters. That it has a result. It's not just what we do, because our mind drives what we do. So if we really want to reduce our suffering, we have to get at the source, which is our mind. Our mind produces results of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So in every moment of mind, the mental factor of feeling, a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, was produced by some previous action. It's a very different worldview. So right now, what do we generally think about the way we feel towards something? If we experience something as pleasant, where do we think that comes from? Or where do we assume that comes from?
The object.
The object. We think the object produces that reaction in us. So I see chocolate cake and I can practically taste it. That's my habituation. So I think the deliciousness of chocolate cake comes from the cake.
Maybe it's awful.
Huh?
Maybe that piece of cake is really not good.
Not everybody likes chocolate cake, much to my surprise.
That is much to my surprise.
Yeah.
But there are pieces of chocolate cake that really aren't good, so.
I don't
that
consider
makes it
them really
easier
chocolate
for me
cake.
to think that it's, if I could just practically taste it, I understand that's coming from me.
It's coming from me. You know? And what the Buddha says is my experience of pleasant is because I've created the cause to experience this pleasant taste. And it happens to be taking the form of chocolate in this life, you know, whatever. Not everybody experiences pleasure when they eat chocolate, you know, but they'll experience pleasure with some other object. You know, that's just, no. But the pleasantness is coming from, it's a result from positive actions in the past. So this means, according to Buddhism, everything that you enjoy, whether it's a taste, whether it's a sound, whether it's a touch, whether it's a thought, whether it's, what else do we have? Visual, you know, sunsets, sunrises, flowers. Every single moment of enjoyment we have was caused by a previous positive action of body, speech, or mind. That's the good news. What does it mean about things we don't like? All those unpleasant experiences.
Same thing.
So,
It's by unpleasant.
it's caused by negative actions of body, speech, and mind. So the external events, whether it's chocolate cake or a flat tire, are conditions. But the experience of pleasant or unpleasant is the ripening of our karma. So if you want to reduce your suffering, you want to reduce your negative actions of body, speech, and mind.
I have a question. So, like, if you get a flat tire, just to take it as, like, don't make it a negative experience, just be like, it is what it is, find a solution, and that's it, and move on? That's
Well,
kinda
one
like-
way to approach it, and of course this is a big subject, so this is just a little
Yeah,
taste of it, is you look at it and go, ooh, I created the cause for this flat tire by some, you know, so I'm not going to blame the nail on the road, or I'm not going to blame, you know, whatever, because we can find countless
Right.
things to blame. We just take it in stride, you know, rejoice that that negative karmic seed is finished, and we don't plant another negative seed by getting angry, throwing the jack around, you know, cursing out the road assistance person for not coming quicker, you know, all of which will plant negative seeds, so we'll suffer in the future. It's taking responsibility for our experience, not for the flat tire, but for our experience of the flat tire. This is how we can start to slowly change our experience of external things. Recognize that our good mood or bad mood is up to us, not the conditions that are external to us. This takes paying attention to what's going on in the mind. The sooner we can recognize, oh, I'm annoyed, the more we can take charge of that state and not let it go into full-blown, you know, rage, which just increases our suffering. But as soon as we recognize that little gut reaction, which is already suffering, you know, and then we're able to look at it going, okay, this happens to everybody. You know, no big deal. I'm nothing special. Why should I think my tire would never be flat, you know? However we want to look at it. But we don't make it into a big deal that determines whether our mood is going to change. Otherwise, we have a roller coaster mind that's responding to things external to us of which we have almost zero control.
right. I have a question. I understand that, and I know that could be.
Where's the but?
Yeah, I can, but what about when it's a big deal?
Yep.
Things that are big deal, how can you handle that? 'Cause
Same way.
isn't it sometimes better to like explode a little bit and then take that other thing?
Right.
Why? Do you enjoy exploding?
No, I mean.
No.
No,
No.
no, you don't.
That's
But
the
you kind of
point.
like get it out of your system and then you're
Oh,
like.
you
I
really
feel-
think so? You don't
No.
think it just can grow more?
Oh, right, because it, okay, right. Got it.
We need to understand that the mind of anger is painful.
Right.
You know, it may feel energetic, powerful, but it's actually not pleasant. So when we say, but you know, hey, everybody would get angry, you know, so you want to be angry? I mean, you have to really, we want to question the way we think. If we hold on, it's not like any, you don't have to worry about being blamed for being angry, you know, because it's not about blame. It's not, it's just understanding cause and effect, you know. So we can allow that condition that's unpleasant to be a condition for us to suffer even more by getting angry. Because then now you have two sufferings. You have the flat tire and you're mad about it. You know? And then, you know, if you're trying to change the tire and it's raining, you've got that to worry about, you know? So, you know, if you get angry, then you're giving yourself you know, another condition for more suffering. No. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like it can get bigger and bigger.
Oh, yeah.
Like it can, right.
Yeah. And we tend to blame the event. You know, like, if you'd put the jack back into the trunk of the car, then I could have been able to change the tire and I wouldn't have been 3 hours late to my meeting. We'd say to our partner when we get home and discover the jack in the garage.
I don't think that just happened, the bow tie on our car was missing, we came out from the, CVS, and we said, oh my God, someone ripped off our, you know, our emblem, our bow tie, and, it was like, you could see where it was pried off, you know, it was missing some clasps and all, it was gone, so we're like, oh gosh, somebody just took that off our car. And so we just making all these stories up in our head, and you know, they had it on film. They thought the guy next in the car, and the police came, and this whole thing. We got home.
Oh, God.
The bow tie was on our driveway,
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God.
and we looked at each other like, "Oh my God, we just got through like telling the story in our heads about this," you know.
Oh, my
And
God.
but we weren't upset. I mean, I have to say that we just kind of like went with the situation. We didn't like start getting angry or anything, which was good. You know, we kept our cool. But yeah, it
Wow.
was there.
But you-
And we
but
said-
it all
and I
started-
did say that guy looked kind of creepy. I did say, yeah, I remember that guy.
So this is, you know, this is practicing a mind that judges others.
Yeah.
A mind that assumes that you know what's going on with others, all of these things. And we just practice them routinely. Now, as soon as something happens, we have a story starter.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just rehearsing this habit. You know, you don't know what's going on, you don't know how it went missing.
But you know what it was? The blower, the guy where they were blowing the house.
I don't care. Hear me, Francesca. I don't care. The point of this is we can just know, the bow tie's missing. And yes, you can choose to pursue it as far as, you know, or not. That doesn't really matter. It's whether or not you use that condition as an opportunity to rehearse negative habits of mind or positive habits of mind or neutral. You know? And this actually is a choice. It doesn't feel like a choice because we are habituated to responding in certain ways. And we're so habituated, it's what we call, which just arises naturally. everybody would respond the same way. Yeah, everybody stuck in samsara would respond in the same way.
We want answers all the time.
And we want to know,
Yeah.
yes. We all cling to something, different, differences, like, oh, I just want to know who screwed me over. Like, that's going to help my life. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, we were trying to see about our insurance if we can get, because the whole grill had.
I don't care.
place.
Because it's absolutely not important. The story is not important.
Right.
True.
It's the inner process that's important in terms of our own suffering or not. But we cling to the story. So we want to look at that and see, is that skillful or not? Because then you go home and you tell everybody else. Then you come to class and you tell everybody there. And so it just continues on and on and on. And if it's an angry story, guess what? You're practicing anger. This was a funny story to find out that, and we were wrong. There it was in our driveway. But it's really, we want to really observe how we respond to things, not just physically or with our speech, but also just what's going on in the mind. What story are we creating? And one of the main themes of all of our stories are that something outside of us is in control of how we feel. And the Buddha said, guess what? Doesn't have to be that way. We can make everything external to us an opportunity to feel okay. By seeing it as a condition to either develop our good qualities, to take something in stride, to develop patience, even to exhaust negative karma. Oh yay, a flat tire, one more past negative action, done, finished. So we really want to understand the way the mind works, how we're training it, so that we can start to recognize when we're going down a direction that we really don't want to continue down. So we can just breathe, step back, pause. Let things just wash over us instead of making it determine how our day's going. So now, we think all this, what we are attracted to and what we're averse to and what we feel pleasant, is sort of random. What's happening to us, whether whether we get the chocolate cake or not, that it's kind of random. And the Buddha said, no, it's really not random. It's conditions that are ripening in this life. So at the mind at the time of death sort of sets the scenario for the next life. So if you have a positive mind at the time of death, that's a good mental condition to have a positive karmic seed be what ripens for a positive rebirth. And then there's all sorts of completing conditions. And as you can tell by all of our lives, it's sort of a mixed bag. We're successful in some areas of our life, we're not so successful in other areas. We have certain skills and not other skills. We have certain things going for us and certain things not going for us. It's just a mixed bag, and that's because we've practiced all kinds of minds, and that's what's ripening. So in Buddhism, you often hear about a precious human rebirth. A precious human rebirth is considered precious. A human rebirth is considered precious because we have a very sophisticated support for our mind. A brain and, whatever, the heart even has neurons that we have a sophisticated system to be able to use our mind. We can really investigate our mind, use our reasoning, that animals don't have as quite a sophisticated support, insects even less so, amoebas even less so. So this is another one of those aspects of jargon. In Buddhism, all minds have equal capacity, whether it's a mosquito mind or your mind, because we've been a mosquito countless times. It isn't the body that determines the mind. The mind is the same, but the physical support from that body really matters. So having a human rebirth is really important because we can do a lot more with our mind when we have a human body. Okay?
Sorry.
Yes?
When you say precious human rebirth, are you referring about reincarnation or that during our life we have precious human rebirth?
It's during a precious human rebirth. It's first you're human, okay? Second are that you have resources in this life, like, of course, this is Buddhism. So, a precious human rebirth includes the opportunity to meet the teachings of the Buddha. Not everybody has that. You have resources to be able to, you have the resources of life, the requisites for life. You have enough money for food and shelter and blah, blah, blah most of the time. That's important. If you're just trying to survive, if you're a human being, but you're born in an area that is, is suffering from famine, that's not a precious human rebirth. The conditions are just too poor for you to be able to really work on your spiritual life. So, it's not just being human, it's being human with good resources, meeting the teachings, not being born in a war zone where there's religious freedom. All sorts of things, are in place that allow you to pursue your spiritual path. And it doesn't have to be Buddhism, but it's just that you have time and resources to be able to do that. Not everybody could show up in the world, could show up to a class on a Thursday night to study the teachings of their spiritual leader because they're trying to survive. That's all they do all day long is try to survive. That's, so this is one of the distinctions between a human rebirth and a precious human rebirth. Okay? I've talked about attention. That's that last always present. Okay, so our states of mind, like all the ever-present states of mind or omnipresent states of mind or whatever translation it is, like contact and intention and attention and recognition, something else, feeling, that, they don't determine whether something is a positive, if it's a positive mind you're having, or a negative mind. Because if you have a moment of anger, you still have those 5 mental factors. Also, the state of mind of anger is there. That's an extra mental factor present. And that's what is what's going to make that moment of mind place a negative seed on the mind stream. Why is it negative? In Buddhism, it's negative because it leads to suffering. Positive states of mind lead to happiness or contentment. There are minds that do no harm, like generosity and patience and wisdom, kindness. Sure, there are more. So a person is a being that's imputed independence on 4 or 5 aggregates. This is jargon. Welcome to Jargon 101. Self, I, person, being are synonyms. They are merely labels, they're merely the names imputed on a particular body and mind. So myself is imputed on my mental continuum in this body in this life. The aggregates form the material aspect. Feeling, recognition, mental formation, and primary or main consciousness, main mind. So form is the body of the material aspect. So you'll even see things like this cup as a form aggregate. So it's not necessarily just talking about a body, but in this context of a person, it's talking about your body. The cause of the body is the sperm and the egg of our parents. Recognition, it's a state of mind. So it's the aggregate that distinguishes one thing from another. Feeling, the happy, suffering, or neutral experiences, which are the ripening results of our positive and negative actions. Mental formation. This is every other awareness other than feeling and recognition. So this is just, these are just divided for study purposes. And then your primary consciousness. And this is that, the fact that we have mind. So when you see this in the, when they talk about aggregates, this is all they're referring to. So a person is the name imputed onto this 4 or 5 aggregates. The reason why it says 4, it doesn't just say 5 aggregates, is not all beings have form. There's a formless realm, which is a state of concentration, where the body is so subtle, it's called formless. So as His Holiness says, just as the, there's that cause and effect isn't just out here. We see it, physical cause and effect we can see, we can feel, we can experience with our senses. But that our inner experience also has cause and effect. And those are our habits of mind. Look at that. Because I could go back to all the ones I skipped. I want to go back to So thoughts. First, take a moment, since this is the first class of the first meeting of a new class, introduce yourselves to each other. Say hello. Find out everybody.
Hi, I've been once a long time ago, so this is, my brother, my husband, he wants.
What's up? How you been?
Yeah, so it is, I very. I don't know, it's lost, because, I guess we're down here, we don't live here, so, and we take care of my elderly parents too, so it depends, but yes, I'm sure we'll probably take another class. I just don't know when, but again, when you show up, it'll be the right one. Yes. Right. So you've been doing this for a long time, or?
Yeah, it was always great, but it was like
Oh, okay, so you're just learning.
I keep trying now. Just keep trying. I said I've been here a long time, I should have been smarter than I am, but I keep trying.
Right.
Who met someone new?
Janet.
Katrina, could you introduce, this is Katrina. Katrina,
This is Katya and Debbie and Arlene and I know Anthony and Chris.
okay,
Yeah, good memory.
Katya, Debbie, all the blondes, Arlene. You know, Katrina.
It's okay.
Okay, Hernan is the one doing the camera. Yay, thank you. So if you miss a class, sometimes there'll be one online. If you can't see any of the slides, then you have to email me and say, where are the slides? This is Raphael. This is Nicole. Everybody knows Nicole. She's a lovely person who greets you at the door. This is Chris and Anthony. Anthony, do you know your neighbor? Okay. Louis. Graziella, thank you. This is Louis. Louis, who did you meet?
Everyone here.
Everyone here. Okay, so then you know Peggy, right?
Yes.
Okay. The one who's been studying so long thinks she should be smarter. So, so Peggy is sitting next to Gabby. Gabby is sitting next to Adrian. Adrian, did you meet anybody behind you?
I met Christian,
Christian,
Veronica,
Veronica, Robert,
Robert.
and Francesca is in the blue. She's married to Anthony here. Don't use that against them. Okay. So Lou, can you introduce me to somebody?
Rory
Rory, hello.
Hello. And Jonathan.
Jonathan. Jonathan's in the check shirt. Jonathan, who's next to you?
This is David.
Hi, David.
Hi, David.
And you're related to this one up front. Whoa. And so is this person.
Yep.
And did you meet Jonathan? Did you meet them both?
Yes, we met from the very beginning.
Yes.
Did you share their name with me?
And they did not. Yes, and Janice. And Luke.
Can y'all hear him?
Oh, and check this out. And this is Ron and Ron.
Well, that should be easy, right? Okay, so we have
Ron.
Rory,
Rory. There you go.
Lou, Janet, David, Jonathan, Ron, and Ron.
Yep.
And who's in the back row?
I'm Brian, and this is my girlfriend Carolina.
Carolina.
This is the first time we're here.
Hello, welcome, Brian. Okay. We'll have a quiz on this next week.
No.
And I will fail. No worries. Okay. This is the practice of patience. Okay. So what is feeling?
Contact? No.
No.
The experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. within a
Okay,
given
and it's one of the always present mental factors, so it accompanies every single moment of mind. It is the karmic ripening of our past actions. It's the experience of a pleasant, this is positive actions result in pleasant experiences. Negative actions result in negative experiences. I'm sure there's more. Okay, so it's said that there are 4 conditions for feelings. So one is the natural condition. Whenever the mind discerns an object, it is a natural tendency to go toward or away from the object. So pleasant objects, we have a tendency to go towards. Unpleasant objects, we have a tendency to want to avoid. Then we have the training condition. This is the environmental and cultural factors influencing our feelings. So what is this like?
Ads on television.
Yes, commercials. We might, decide that, if you drink Budweiser, you'll have lots of friends. And you certainly show up to the Super Bowl halftime show. So okay?
Where we live.
Where we live. Like there's different foods that are
Yeah.
desirable in different parts of the world. You know, we have our taste buds get habituated to certain flavors and things depending on where we're, what's cooking, where we live.
Our choice of religion,
Yeah.
Yes?
what we
And in some
draw.
places, it's not even a choice. In most families, it's not a choice. You're born into a religion. If
Yeah.
you're born to a religious household, then you're raised in the religion of your parents. So all of these influence what we get habituated to is seen, like normal, we just see it as part of our culture. And mental disposition. This is the condition of our type of rebirth. Our karma propels us to the desire realm because of our particular attraction to sensory objects. So the desire realm is one of 6 realms in samsara. Samsara is the Buddhist word for cyclic existence, uncontrolled birth, rebirth, birth, death, rebirth, which just ends up in death, rebirth, death, death. So this means we're stuck in samsara. It's uncontrolled rebirth. There's a form realm, there's a formless realm, and then there's the desire realm. There's also the hell realm, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, the human realm, the demigods, and the god realms. So realms, that word's used a lot. But the hell realm and the animal realm and the hungry ghost realm and the human realm and the demigods and the god realms are all part of the desire realm. And it's just exactly what it says, that we're controlled by our desires. We have such strong habits of following our cravings, whether they're aversions or attractions, whether we like them or dislike them. We think happiness and suffering is completely about those things external to us. And we're sort of addicted to it. So we have a habit of following our cravings. And we have this habit, according to the Buddha, of this sense of dissatisfaction all the time. That every moment is not perfect. Like we're really perfect in having no perfect moment. There's a certain edge to every moment of dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction results in an urge for something else. So you might be cold in this moment and want to be warm. And then you get warm, you go to the beach, right? And then what happens?
You get hot.
You get hot. So then you run home to the air conditioner. And that this is how we spend our lives. We're hungry, we find food, but we're constantly chasing not what's happening now, but whatever we can do to fix now. And that this is how we perpetuate, our mental suffering, particularly. Is we're always chasing something to make this moment better, and it never really succeeds. It might temporarily, very briefly succeed. You have a taste of chocolate. Oh, that's nice. And then what?
Want more.
Yeah, you want more because it's over. It doesn't last long. So we're trying to seek contentment in external objects. It's something giving us something. Whether it's, I don't know, warm clothing when it's cold, tasty food when we're bored, any food when we're hungry, So those of us who are stuck in the desire realm, as opposed to the form and formless realm, are really habituated to the experience of sensory objects. And we practice them. The good news about being born human is that we have, especially if you have good conditions, so that you can like pursue, oh, what's happening with my mind, We have a sophisticated support for our mind, so we can work on our mind and we can change some of these habits, so we can, start to interrupt these urges and start to recognize that happiness and suffering are inner states. And it really has nothing to do with external things. We can reduce our suffering right away by how we respond to events, rather than adding, layering on top of events, a mental story of blame for our suffering on the event. Because the Buddha said that actually our suffering is arising due to past actions. That any event we can respond to with a mind of contentment. We don't have to be thrown by anything. Because we can take control of our mind. That seems really impossible because we tend to go to the extremes. We hear that and we go, yeah, but what if there's a tiger running towards me, I'm not going to be able to control my mind. Well, you hope you can control your mind in that moment because you hope wisdom arises and you can get out of the way, So it's not really true that there's conditions. It's just about how much control we have. At this moment, the Buddha would say, we don't have any. We're just running on habit energy. From the moment we wake up, even in our dreams, we're actually running on habit energy. We're doing what we've habituated to. That even children, like even babies, have habits already. That it's not just your DNA, it's not just your gene pool, it's not just your environmental conditions. It's also what habits of mind you bring with you. So we have to use this incredible faculty that we have of awareness and start being aware of our inner world. In the Buddhist time, his students weren't called Buddhist. It always cracks me up. But he called them insiders, meaning inner beings. That's where the focus was, on their inner processes. So this is why meditation is an encouraged skill to develop, because it's through meditation that can help you develop the habit of noticing what's going on with your mind. Everybody familiar with meditation? I can't remember. I know I asked, didn't I ask? I don't remember what you said. Okay. All right. So basically, in Tibetan Buddhism, we emphasize two types of meditation. One is sometimes called single-pointed meditation, sometimes called calm abiding meditation. It's a kind of meditation where you're trying to, you're disciplining your mind to do what you tell it to do. So the simple version of concentration meditation or single-pointed meditation is using an object like your breath, the sensation of the breath going in and out of the body, and you hold your attention on the breath. And you learn to let whatever thoughts arise, whatever just pass through your mind like clouds in the sky, and you just keep, every time you realize, oh, I'm over here, I'm in the past, I'm in the future, you just gently bring your mind back to the breath. This is just a discipline. You're trying to train your mind to listen to the instructions. It's a handy object of mine because we carry it with us. We're always breathing. So we can use it anytime, anywhere, at any moment, except possibly driving. You know, meditation and driving don't mix well. Breathing and driving do. Meditating on the breath, not a good plan. You know. But this is just about disciplining so we can focus our mind where we tell it to focus. Now, who cares if you can follow your breath? That's not particularly important. You know, what's important is being able to tell your mind to focus on the breath, and you do it. That's what's important. It's the skill of that. So Tibetan Buddhism also emphasizes analytical meditation, where you reflect on different aspects of like habits of mind. Like, so say you have the habit of anger. So you reflect on the disadvantages of anger. You know, and you really look at, how does anger serve you? Do you feel good when you're angry? You know, you really investigate, how does it feel to be angry? How much control do you have when you're angry? How accurate is anger? You know, is it an accurate reflection of the object, or is it an exaggeration of the negative aspects of the object? Do your decisions made when you're angry work out well? You know, so you're starting to, you're really looking at it. And then you look at perhaps the advantages of not responding with anger. And you develop familiarity with these ideas. And you develop your reasoning about, maybe I'd like to give up the mind of anger. And then you look at what would be the positive consequences of not being angry, so that you can motivate yourself to expend the effort it takes to change this habit. But so this practice of analytical meditation develops your reasoning. Because we really do things because we believe they do something for us. We think anger gives us power. We think it helps us get what we want when we display that that's not what we want. And these things are probably, for the most part, mistaken, our beliefs about anger. So we really want to investigate them and develop new theories about anger. And then use them to help us, moment to moment, to recognize, oh, okay, anger's arisen. I'm not going to say anything, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to make a decision, because I really know that anger is not a reliable state of mind. It's not giving me accurate information. And this helps us, at least, to do nothing. And slowly, the earlier and earlier we recognize that we're starting to get irritated, we can start having this conversation in our heads, so that it doesn't, so minor irritation doesn't become anger. And so in this way we work with our minds. And meditation helps us by, in order to be mindful of what is going on in our mind, we have to remember to look. So we set an intention. I really want to notice today when I start to sense my body expressing frustration. For me it's this tiny little catch I get. That I just kind of know, I don't like what's happening. And for me it's now a warning sign, beware. You could lose it if you don't get, if you don't interrupt this response. Shake it off, relax, whatever. It can go in a direction I don't want to go. So these two types, learning how to be able to focus on what we're telling ourselves to focus on, and developing reasons why it's important to focus on these things, is sort of the method to start taking control of our mind, which just involves noticing what's going on first, then reflecting about that, whether it's to our advantage or not, and then learning some skills about how to change it. Make sense? It's a lot richer than that, but we're just starting. So finally, they talk about the condition of our habits ripening as aggressive or quiet or gentle. So some of us have themes. And we might want to change them. So if you've practiced, like Venerable Rabina always liked to talk about, she's one of the teachers in this tradition from Australia. She's one of the first, I'm one of my first teachings of Buddhism I received from her. And she said she was just born angry. Just, saw her whole world through the lens of anger, And so that became a really important focal object for her, through Buddhism, to really try to, let go of this habit of being angry, and understanding that having that habit from a very early age, meaning immediately, can have this effect of having an aggressive style, that you approach, the way you respond to everything is through sort of an aggressive manner. And you have to look at whether that's serving you well or not. But you can learn how to have a more gentle manner. So it's more about just really looking and going, is that working or not? Am I suffering more because of this habit? So it's like if you have it's recognizing, well, it's just about looking and then being able to start discerning different states of mind. Recognizing that, it seems that when I look, I spend an awful lot of the day in the future. I'm always thinking about what I'm going to do later. Very seldom am I thinking about what I'm doing right this moment. So I'm not actually living my life. My life is just a condition for me to think about something in the future. Or I'm spending all my time in the past. Or I'm spending all my time looking at, judging others. Or I'm spending all of my time reminding myself why I hate my job. So we want to look at these things. And so the way to do that is just to start by being aware of the mind. So one way to do that is to start by every day trying to spend 5 minutes just sitting quietly and finding out what's going on in the mind. The reason why we usually start meditations with a focus on the breath is it helps settle the mind down. It sort of interrupts whatever conversation we've already got going enough so that we can watch. Because what we want to learn to do is to recognize that we can step back from all these mental events, all these thoughts going on, all the sensations that our sense awarenesses are recognizing, and just watch like a movie without getting hooked by them, by the stories or the thoughts or the sensations. And then we can see how fast they go away, or if we kind of get involved in them and drag them out, create longer stories. But it's developing the skill of being able to sit and mentally step back instead of being involved in the thinking and just watch what's going on. You meditators in here, does that make sense?
Mhm.
I'm not giving people the wrong instruction. Okay. So let's try that. So the key about meditation physically is to try to have a straight back. So the easiest way to do that, if you're sitting on a cushion, is have your butt higher than your knees. So you're sitting on the edge of the cushion. And sometimes you have to find the right kind of, everybody finds a cushion that works for them. Or sit on the chair, and you usually don't lean back in the chair, you're sitting up. Like those period movies where you see all the women are sitting on the edge of the chair with this perfect posture. And I wish I knew how to do that. So, because the meditation's about becoming more aware. So we want an open posture that's awake, not a closed-in posture that really is conducive to sleep, since none of us get enough sleep. So you want the back straight, so this line between your nose, and your belly button. But you want it to be relaxed. It's not a tense posture. It's just an upright posture. And just your hands are in your lap. And it's helpful if your gaze is lowered, so it's just, looking down without really focusing on anything. So it's helpful to keep your eyes gently open, just very slightly open, so light can come in, which helps that feeling of alertness. To begin, it can be helpful to take a few deep breaths. And then just let your breath go in and out naturally. Now you want to place your mental attention on the sensation of the breath at the tip of the nose as it's going in and out of the nose. For some people, it's helpful to count your breaths. So you might count your exhales until you get to 10, and then begin again. And whenever you recognize your mind has been distracted outward, you just gently bring it back to the sensation of the breath. And you begin again at 1. can relax your attention on that sensation of the breath. And just bring your awareness, simple awareness, to whatever's arising in the mind. Sounds, temperature, thoughts. But allowing these thoughts, these awarenesses, just to arise and cease without your getting involved in them. And anytime you realize you've been hooked by a thought, you strengthen your focus on your breath again. Now just bring your awareness to your body sitting here. The sensation, the chair, the cushion pressing against the body. Perhaps your feet touching the floor. Your awareness of the temperature in the room. And the sounds. And then just gently open your eyes. Aware of other people in the room. Aware of our neighbors watching. They've been quiet for a while. I really became successful with meditation in airports because I was really self-conscious about the sound of my breathing. And so I couldn't hear that anymore. And I learned that I could get, it becomes white noise. All the noise of the airport, all those announcements, just all the hubbub would just become, and that would just allow me to let go of this self-consciousness of the breath. So the conditions really don't matter. But it is the motivation to allow yourself to do it. And that's really it. The main success of meditation is showing up to meditate. Doesn't matter how many times your mind gets hooked. It's all about training the mind to come back. So when you're just doing bare attention, when you're just trying to be aware of your awareness, when you're just sitting and allowing yourself to be aware of just sitting, it doesn't matter what the conditions are. But when we're new, it can help to pick the same place every day in your home Or, I mean, a lot of people do it at work because they have an office and they just close the door at lunchtime. So wherever you can, but it's really helpful to use the same chair, to sit in the same spot, because then when you come back to that spot, to that chair, you know what your task is. And it just makes it easier to do. It's helpful to do it the same time every day for the same reason. It just becomes a routine. And you just start by showing up. And then trying to just sit up straight and allow your attention to be drawn inward by first noticing that sensation of the breath, following that for a few minutes so that your mind, kind of gets quiet enough so that you can actually be aware of your awareness. It's also an excellent condition for setting a motivation and an intention for your day. So it can become this really great way to remember what's important to you in the morning so that your actions during the day can reflect what's really important to you. You know, so one of the things that's really important to you is to really spend some time with your loved ones. That might help you pay attention when they're there, instead of being only there with one ear. Because you remember that morning going, my relationships with my children or with my partner, with my friends are really important to me. So when we're interacting, I'm going to be there and not be somewhere else. So if we set motivations and intentions in the morning, that can help us throughout the day, especially if it becomes a habit every day.
So
Yeah.
Is it better to do it in the morning?
Well, if you care about what you do in the morning.
No, can it be done at night instead?
But if you want to take care of your actions in the morning, it can be helpful to do at least to pause long enough to go, okay, what's the point of my activities this morning? Like sometimes we just get caught in the chores of everything and we forget, I'm doing these things because I want my kids to eat. It's not just because, there's a reason. And that can help ground us in what's really important and not just this list of to-dos that you have to cross off. But make it more meaningful to you that you have this list because this is how you take care of yourself and your loved ones. And that can make them much easier to do. And then it also can make you realize, I'm just crossing this off my list, period, because I don't need to do it, I don't want to do it, it doesn't benefit anybody. I just think I'm supposed to do it. It's always good to find those things out. So, but mainly we want to start learning how to notice what's going on in our mind. And then periodically through the day, breathe and go, what's going on with me? Just, pause a moment to see what's going on. And this way you develop a habit of noticing what's going on in your inner world. And then that gives you the material with which to reduce your suffering. That enough? That's enough. Okay, so I'll be sending you the readings for this module, and the first meditation's on continuity of mind. So it's an analytical meditation. It's one where you're kind of reflecting on this continuum of mind. Well, it's really long. I don't know why they're all really long. Because when you start meditating, they should be really short. But what's good to do is to read it like it's one of the reading materials and get familiar with it. And then you can do one sentence, and just kind of reflect on that. And you don't have to be sitting in some really formal posture or something. You can because you're just trying to get familiar with this perspective. So continuity of mind is about looking at how each moment of mind is preceded by a moment of mind, was preceded by a moment of mind, and there's some, continuity there. So, just like we know that if we walk into a room and we're angry, the way we see what's going on in that room is different than when we walk into that room really happy about something. So we want to see that there's this continuity between our moments of mind. Okay? The first readings is an article by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So, anyway, also, the FPMT, our parent organization, does all these courses online now, and you can have access to them. We can give you the password to the online Mind and Its Potential program for $20. They'll give you the key, and so you can listen to all the audio there. You can listen, so it's like having twice the course. Have no time, don't bother.
And you get to listen to Richard Gere.
Oh yes, they always have a little thing. Yes, an introduction. That's right. Richard Gere is the first video. They're going to have to come up with a younger person.
People aren't going to know who he is.
That's right. We need someone hip, current, not just Buddhist and rich. But one real nice thing about it is you get the audio to the meditations. So you can listen to guided meditations, which is nice. And this isn't the best condition for guided meditations because we share walls. Anyway, but yeah.
And you, if we miss your class, can we go to YouTube still? Is that what that is?
Yes, and hopefully you'll be there.
Yeah.
No promises, but we try. But everything we do here is dependent on the kindness of others, and so sometimes they have other commitments, and they're not always available. So.
And also, if you haven't signed up for the list tonight, then please do so.
Please
it's
do.
right on the
You
desk,
can email.
on the front desk with your email, clearly.
And please write it so I can read it, because I take the list home and type it into my computer, and if I can't read it, it's just going to bounce back. And then I'll be very upset going, Nicole, can you tell what this person wrote down? And some people, it just never happens. So that's karma.
And then Saturday, if anyone's looking for more meditation.
So Saturday is so once a month or once every 2 months or so, we have a practice day that we call a meditation day or a retreat day or something that Jackie Keeley leads. She is the founder of this center, and she's a really good meditation instructor and leader. So she runs our meditation days. And so she happens to be doing one this Saturday from a module on daily practice. So please join us. So that's a good day to have sort of like, I'll get really familiar with how to do this kind of day. And so there'll be one on mind later on. So what else do we need to know? That's it.
Losar's next Monday.
So Monday night we're going to have Guru Puja, which is a prayer ritual for Tibetan New Year. Losar is the word for Tibetan New Year, which happens on Monday. It also happens to be the anniversary of Lama Yeshe's death. So we do Guru Puja in honor of him. So that's next week. But if you're not into ritual, that would freak you out. It's all done in English because I can't chant in Tibetan. I can't chant in English either. So I can't chant. So it's all done in English. So, but anyway, so that's going on too. Anything else? Okay. Same time next week. Thank you for your. Oh, yes. Now we need to dedicate. So we've now just spent 2 hours almost, talking about the mind, because we're interested in possibly helping train our minds in positive directions. How great is that? this is really a positive activity. We would love to have more of the world doing that. So we want to feel good about it, and we want to rejoice that we did it. We made it the intention to come, we showed up, and then we weren't alone. How great is that? So we can rejoice in everybody's effort, you know? And this places these potentials on our mind stream for positive results in the future, you know? So we want to dedicate those positive results to ripen for others and not exhaust until there are no suffering beings at all.